Today's daf is daf Lamed Aleph, and we'll start with Gufa. Omer Rav Chizda, Moder of Nechuni ben Akana. So Nechuni ben Akana was the one who said that if you violate a chiyuv kares and you incur a chiyuv mamon at the same time, we apply kimlev d'Rabbanan, you potter from mamon, like in the case of Yom Kippur. But there is a case, according to Rav Chizda, in which even Rav Nechuni ben Akana would admit that we suspend the principle of kimlev d'Rabbanan, he has to pay tashlum. And that's going to be a case where we're lacking in be'idna. You remember that yesterday we mentioned the word be'idna, which means simultaneity. There has to be an absolute simultaneity in both the chiyuv misa and the chiyuv mammon, or the chiyuv malchus and the chiyuv mammon. But here's a case of gonev chelbot shel chavero. The moment he steals his friend chelev, he's chayev mammon to pay him for the chelev. Chelev is mutar b'no, it's osbachila, and it's an isur kares. Via acholo, and then he ate the chelev subsequently. So there was a ma'aser gneva first that generates the chiyuv mammon, and subsequently there was a chiyuv achila and a chiyuv kares who chayev he has to pay. Shekvar nischayev begneva kodem sheyovel lidei isur chelev. Now, the minute that he picks up the chelev for the purpose of stealing it, that itself generates the chiyuv mammon. So let's say, for example, if the object would go down in value or up in value, it would all be determined at the moment of Hagbah when he lifted up the chelev. He's not chayiv for achil until he eats it. So that the chiyuv of kares, which came later, could not knock off the chiyuv mammon that came early. Lema pliga de Rabbi Oven. Shall we assume that Rav Chizda's comment is in direct conflict with that comment of Rabbi Oven? The Omer Rabbi Oven. Now here's where we get into some profound sugis. Azorek cheitz mitchilas arbel sof arba kort shirayim v'alichos of potter shakira tzorach hanochehi. A new concept that the Gemara is introducing here within the context of Kimle B'Derabim. That's called litzorech. What happens? He takes an arrow and he shoots it off in Rishus Harabim, and one of the avos malachos of Hotzah is Mavir Dalaramis Rishus Harabim. And while the arrow is in flight, it damages someone's clothing. Can you imagine if you remember the old days when they used to, you'll see it even today, they used to lay out their laundry on a laundry string, and so there's this beautiful garment, it's made of silk, and he shoots an arrow in Rishus Harabim, and it goes through the Yenam's garment string. And according to the statement here of Rabbi Oven, he's potter. He doesn't have to pay damages, even though he's absolutely deliberate. We have to tar and feather him, but the answer is that he's chayav misa for havaras dalad havas Rishus Harabim. Now you have to keep in mind that when he shot the arrow, he's not chayav yet until it lands, which is called hanoch, so that every meleches hotzah has to have three parts to it. It's got to have akira, havaras rishus, which in the case of dalad amos is considered like havaras rishus, and hanoch. So now before he got to the hanocha, and the arrow is not yet landed on the ground, he already incurred a chiyuv mammon. And yet, he's potter as a mazik, even though he destroyed the shirayim while the arrow was in flight before he incurred a chiyuv mitzah. But the answer is we have a principle called tzorech hanochehi, that the akira is l'tzorech hanoch. And the Gemara now wants to apply that to the case of Rav Chizda. Hakanami here too, in Rav Chizda's case, where he lifts up the chelev in order to steal his friend's chelev, and then he eats it, we should apply a principle of Hagbah Sorech Achilahi. And we view it as if from the moment of Hagbah, he's already involved in Achila, even though he hasn't done the Achila, he's only lifted up the Chelev. But so too, when he lifts up the arrow or shoots the arrow, he's not yet involved in Hanocha. Hanocha is going to be down the line, but Akira is Litzorach Hanocha. And if you have this concept called Akira Litzorach Hanocha, and therefore from the Akira till Hanocha, you have a chiyuv mitzvah that's sort of like floating on top of him, and therefore any chiyuv mammon in between is going to be knocked off by the chiyuv misa. Here too, when he lifts up the chalev in order to eat it, that's already litzorach achila, and we can take that period of time from akira, which means hagbah in this case, till achilas achalev, and consider it as one long extension, such that we would pater him up from the chiyuv gneva, which was incurred at the moment of hagbah. Honestly, Rabosa, I have to be totally honest with you. I don't understand the Gemara's analogy here. It makes no sense to me. I mean, Akira Tzarech Hanocha means that the Akira is part of the Mechayev. He has begun the Meleches Hotzah. I wouldn't say that Hagbah is part of an action of Achila. Again, it was L'tzarech Achila. But when the Gemara says Akira L'tzarech Hanocha, that's much more than, the Gemara understands this on a very superficial level. That L'tzarech means in his mind, what is he aiming for? Pardon the pun. He's aiming the chetz in order to land it. Here too, he's aiming the hagbah in order to eat the chalev. But certainly you would not say that lifting up the chalev is in any shape or form a beginning of aschol of achila. So the avera of achilas chalev has not begun yet. Perhaps that's what the Gemara is going to answer. I don't know. We'll try to fit that into the Gemara. Gemara says, Hochi hashta hasam, over there, in the case where he sends out a chetz, maybe the Gemara means that since hanocha is an akira, is an absolute requirement for meleches hotzah, then the akira itself is part of the meleches hotzah. But hacha, here in the case where he lifts up the chalev, I mean, who says that he's going to eat the chalev? Again, he may have intention to eat the chalev, but he may decide not to eat the chalev.
Rabbi?
Yes.
But every time you pick something up, it's not Geneva, right? It
Only if you have in mind to steal it. So if he had in mind the kavanah was to steal it, and when he lifts it up, he does what's called a kinyan hagbah, which we'll speak about a little bit later, and then he incurs a chiyuv mammon from that moment and on. However, as far as a chiyuv for achilas chalev is concerned, I mean, just because he lifted up the chalev with the express intention of eating it, that doesn't mean that the hagbah itself is called litzorech achila, efshal achila b'lo hagbah. And the Gemara points out that there's no such thing as meleches havaras daladamas without an akira, but you could have achila without hagbah. Now, how could you have achila without hagbah? So the Gemara says, even if it's on the table or on the floor for that matter, he can bend down and eat it without ever lifting it up. So you see that, again, the way I would interpret the Gemara's lumdus is that the hagbah is not an integral part of the achila, and I'm going to prove that to you because you can have achila without hagbah. If you can have B without A, then A is certainly not an integral part of B. But you cannot have hanocha without akira, and therefore akira, A, is an integral part of B of the meleches havar. Inami, the Gemara has another rejection of this analogy, and the Gemara can even ask for an afkamina, my beinayu between the two explanations. Hasam, iboyla dure. Lo matzi laduri. Once he shoots the arrow, he cannot bring the arrow back. But here, in the case of lifting up the chalev, then certainly matzi mahadale, he can decide that he'll give the chalev back, he'll put it down, he won't need it. Ma'ika bein hailish no hailish nika bein nayu amavir sakin v'shesarabim v'kara shirayim balichasa. So in this case, he's not throwing any sort of a chetz, but rather he's carrying a sakin. And as he's carrying it from Tchilas Dalit to Sof Dalit in Rishus Harabim, he rips his friend's shirayim. There's no difference between Zrika and Halicha Biyadayim. In both cases, the Akira is an integral part of the Meleches Hotzah. And he efshalai nochel akira, but lahachlishna, according to the second explanation, the avrid matzi ma'adullah, lo matzi ma'adullah, depends, can he stop or not? Here he can stop. Hacha Motzi Mandula could decide that instead of carrying it the full 4 amos, he'll stop prematurely and he'll put down the chayfetz and he won't incur any chiv. So if your emphasis is on the akira as part of the malecha, then there's no difference between holacha and zrika. If on the other hand, the emphasis on whether he can take it back, and therefore the akira terminates, here the akira could not be, here the akira could terminate. In the case of the chaytz, he cannot terminate his akira. Gufa, Rabbi Yovan Azori chaytz v'tzilas arba l'sof arba v'kar shirayim alichos potur shakir l'tzorch hanochi masiv Rabbibi bar Abaye. And Rabbibi is going to quote a brisa. We'll have a lot to say about this brisa. Hagonev kis b'Shabbos. Okay, he's stealing someone's purse on Shabbos, and he goes into his friend's rishus, lifts up the purse, takes it out into rishus harabim. He's going from rishus hayochid to rishus harabim, puts it down in rishus harabim, and he incurs a chiyuv from meleches hotzah. Chayav. So again, if we're talking about the idna and the issue of simultaneity, and the moment he lifts up the kiss for the purpose of stealing it, he's kona with a kinyan agva, and he's chayav mama. He's not going to be chayav for meleches hotzah until he takes it out to rishus harabim and puts it down in rishus harabim. And that's what Rav Bibi quotes from the brisa, that Harei Shekvar Nitzchayev B'Gneva Kodem Chiyavel L'Yisur Skila. The Chiyuv Tashlumei Mammon was generated, incurred by the Hagbah. Now this is really interesting because keep in mind the Hagbah here was Gershus Bailim. It was in the property, in the domain of the owner of the object. So he points out here in the footnote, based on a sugim Bava Kama Ayin Bava Basra Ayin Vav, Hagbah Kona B'Chol Mokom Afilu B'Rishus She'ein Shalom. That's the power of Hagbah. Hagbah means I took it into my rishus, even though physically it's still within your rishus. But the Chiyuv Misa, he's not chayav until he's motzi l'rishus harabim, and he puts it down. So he already has incurred a Chiyuv Mammon before he gets to the Chiyuv Misa. However, now the brisa has a seifa. The seifa of the brisa is he never actually lifted up the object, so therefore he wasn't kona the object with hagbah. The only way he could be kona the object is by taking the object out of the rishus of the owner and taking it out into, in this case, a rishus harabim. At that very split second that he crosses the boundary between his friend's rishus, entering into the boundary of rishus harabim, he has incurred 2 chiyuvim. One is a chiyuv mammon of tashlumei gneva, and number 2, a chiyuv misa because of meleches hotzah. Now let's, for a moment here, just maybe we'll be able to anticipate what's coming around the bend. The brisa looks for a case where you're stealing a kiss and violating meleches hotzah, and you'll either be chayav and pay for the kiss, or you'll be potter to pay for the kiss. You'll be chayav and pay for the kiss if you did agbah. You will not be chayav pay for the kiss in a case where it's magar v'yotz. If you're chayav for agbah, then the chiyuv mammon came before the chiyuv misa for meleches hotzah, and therefore you're chayav for the kiss. But one question that we had here is, if this brisa is looking for a distinction between whether you're chayav for hagbah, meaning you're chayav for mammon as a ganav, or you're potur, did this brisa have to resort to a case of megarev v'yotze? Couldn't the brisa find a situation in which there would be simultaneity between the chiyuv mammon and the chiyuv misa, even without introducing megar v'yotze? And that would mean that the moment that he lifted up the pocketbook, he already began his Melechas Hotzah, meaning it would be the kickoff, shall we call it the Akira, Litzarech Hotzah. And now we get back to the principle of Rabbi Oven. Rabbi Oven said that whenever you have Akira Litzarech Hotzah, we apply the principle of Kimlei b'derabamine, and you're potter. But here in the Reisha of this brisa, we're not applying Kimlei b'derabamine. And this despite the fact that the Akira is Litzarech Hanoch. That's what the Gemara is going to ask now. V'amai hachanami lema hagbal Litzarech Hotzahi. And the Gemara answers, Hachid Mayaskina Chek Bial Manas Latzniel. Benimlach Olav Lotzio. When he made the Hagbah, it was Almanas Latzniel. He had no intention of taking this kiss out into Rosh Hashanah. He rather found a place within the Rishus of the Bailim where he could hide it, and then it'll come back in the future, and he'll take it from that place. So although he did have intention to steal it, and he indeed incurred that chiyuv moment at the moment that he lifted up the kiss, but nevertheless, he's not chayiv for hotzah in the case of almanas lehatzlio. Why did Moshe Avram come? Why did Moshe Avram come? Oh, okay. So you know what? I'm going to come and show you something. Okay. So let's emphasize that if his hagbah was almanas latznia, so although he's chai for gneva with the hagbah, but he's not, that hagbah could not serve and be classified as an akira, because the akira has to be an akira litzorach hotzah. So the Gemara says the following: the assumption of this brisa is that he's chayav for both gneva as a result of the hagbah. It was almanas latzniel, so he's not chayav as an akira. But later on, when he goes out into the Shusarab and puts it down, he's chayav. Now, how could you be mitzaref an akira l'tzorach hatzna together with the hotzah? And you'll say v'nimlach olav lotzio, but nimlach olav means he changed his mind as he was moving. So there was never an akira. In other words, every hotzah has to start with a static situation. And here, while he was in flight, so to speak, figuratively, he made the change in his mind that he's going to take it out. What is Rabbi Yochanan telling us? I tonight I have yortzai for my mother. I remember my mother used to always move the furniture around. She always had chidushim, where to put the furniture. So imagine on Shabbos, someone wants to move furniture from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And then all of a sudden he decided, you know what? I don't want this piece of furniture. I'm going to take it out, make it hefker. So that's the case of Rabbi Yochanan, that in the flight, so to speak, while he was moving it from one corner of the room to the other corner of the room, he decided to take it outside to Rosh Hashanah. And Rabbi Yochanan says he's potur because that's not an akira hamachayeves. He never actually stopped, put it down, and then picked it up for the purpose of taking it out. While he was moving it, he made the change of heart and he decided to take it out. So here too, if we apply Rabbi Yochanan's principle in the case of Higbio Almanas Latznio, then, okay, I understand why he's Chayav Mishum Gneva, because he wanted to steal it, but why is he Chayav when he changes his mind to take it out, Mishum Hotzah? So the Gemara answers, Lo Tema, we have to change one of the screws over here, Almanas Latznio, Le'em Almanas Lotzio. He took his friend's, let's say, pocketbook, and he lifted it up for the purpose of taking it out and putting it in Rishus HaRabim. So why is he going to be incurring a chiyuv? Right? Why is he chayav mishum Shabbos? And the answer is al manas lo tzio, because when he lifted it up, he had agbal tzarech hotzah. If he had agbal tzarech hotzah, then whatchamacallit, then he should be patur according to Rabbi Oven, right? According to Rabbi Oven, he should be patur from paying for the gneva because Zakira was l'tzarech al manas lo tzio. So Gemara answers, Hachem emayas kinon kisha amad. He lifted up the pocketbook of his friend in his friend's rishus for the purpose of stealing it, but then he didn't continue with that akira and make hanocha. He stopped frozen in his tracks. Kisha amad. He was oker akira rishona, and now he starts with another akira. So there were two akiras. The first akira was simultaneous with the chiyuv mama. The second akira was beginning of the chiyuv misa. And therefore the Brisa says that unless it was a gorer v'yotze situation, he's going to be chayav for tashlume gneva. There's only one problem here. It's not really true that every time that you stop, which is called amida, you're oker the akira rishona. Amad lamai, it depends what his purpose is in stopping. Like, take, for example, you're wearing a knapsack. And at some point, as you're walking and carrying the knapsack on your back, it gets very, very heavy. And it's pushing on one side of your back. So you take a stop, a very quick break, and you move it around from one place to the other. That's called lekatif. Lekatif means for the lashon keifayim, his shoulders. He moves it from one way to the other. Does that undermine his original akira? Urchehu. That's exactly the way people carry things. They keep making stops on the way in order to make sure that it's secure on their back. So why do you assume that he was mavatel, the original akira? Ella b'yomid lafush. We have no option but to assume that he wanted to take a rest. Once he takes a rest, it's already been too heavy for him on his back. He's not trying to just move it around. He's taking a rest. He's taking a pause, an interruption, a break, and now he's mavatal akira rishon. And now we're going to get into the principle, which is all over the Shas, every other page, called liflog v'lisnei b'dida. Imagine that the Brisa, in order to come up with a case where he would be patur for gneva on the kiss, it was gorer v'yotze. Forget about gorer v'yotze. I don't need gorer v'yotze. He picked up the kiss, he took it out, and he's chayav for Melech Shabbos, and he's patur for gneva. Why? Because he was omed lafush. I'm sorry, because he was omed lekatev. And if it was omed lekatev, then his original akira is still active, it's still alive and well. So the Gemara says, liflog v'lisnei b'midah. Why do you have to come on to gorer kisei v'yotze? Why not just say he was omed lafush? If he was omed lafush, he was oker mavatel, the original akira, and therefore he's going to be chayav for gneva. V'lekatev mai.